ready to go. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Rahn. I'm the Vice President of Account Services for S2S Insurance Specialist. We are a bespoke and niche insurance brokerage focusing on seed to sale coverage for everywhere in the cannabis and hemp supply chain. We are here and gathered today at the 2024 C-Lab Conference to discuss, from bud bars to bevy, innovators and experts discuss the opportunities and risks in Florida's emerging THC consumption market. This is going to be a really fun and interesting conversation today. We have a lot of very interesting and insightful people on the dais today as our panel. And without further ado, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce, starting on my far left, we have Travis Duncan. Travis is the Chief Product Officer of BREZ. One of the original team members since launch, he is primarily responsible for product formulation, development, and other innovations related to functional wellness. Let's give a round of applause for Travis. Next to Travis, we have Michael Hayes. Michael Hayes is the co-founder of HazyDayz Hemp Social, a hemp beverage bar and social consumption lounge based in Stuart, Florida. Originally from South Florida, Michael earned his bachelor's from Auburn and then his JD at Georgia School of Law, followed by a master's in sports management at Columbia University. And with that robust legal background, having advised clients in the cannabis industry on various business law and intellectual property issues, he is also an adjunct professor of legal studies at Franklin University since 2022. With extensive experience in establishing successful startups and a deep understanding of the cannabis sector's legal and business complexities, Michael is dedicated to guiding entrepreneurs through unique challenges faced by cannabis industry startups. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Hayes. Next to Michael, we have one of C-Lab's newest and youngest entrepreneurs on the stage today. We have Parker Jackson. As CEO of Liberty in a Can, America's THC seltzer, Parker leads a dynamic lifestyle brand that is revolutionizing the beverage industry with federally legal, zero-calorie, ultra-fast-acting THC seltzer. With product offers a new way to experience premium cannabis in everyday settings while aligning the adventurous spirit of thrill seekers. Parker is proud to champion cannabis through community engagement, premium product standards, and a commitment to enhancing consumer experiences across North America and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Parker Jackson. Last and certainly not least, we have C-Lab member at large, Paula Savchenko. Paula is the founding partner of Cannacore Group and PS Law Group. She's an attorney consultant working primarily in the cannabis industry on a multi-state level. More specifically, her work involves competitive licensing and regulatory compliance in the cannabis industry, and her success in attaining competitive licenses for her clients has come with a good understanding of what regulators are looking for. Ladies and gentlemen, Paula Savchenko. So, to get us started, I just want to discuss what your initial thoughts about a, legal consumption in hopefully a adult use state of Florida once Amendment 3 passes. Let's start with Paula.
Yeah, sure. Obviously really excited about the opportunity for the state to legalize marijuana recreationally, and then next up would be consumption lounges and much more. If you asked me 6 months ago if I thought that recreational was going to pass, the answer was I really don't think so, unfortunately. Lately, especially after Trump's announcement and other movement. I do think that we have enough traction for this to pass. With that being said, we do have to pass it by a 60% supermajority vote, and only 3 other states that have had that requirement have passed recreational marijuana initiatives in those states. So that definitely is fighting an uphill battle. Another part that's behind the scenes going on is the hemp industry and the marijuana industry is fighting each other in a way right now, because the marijuana industry doesn't like it that the hemp industry is able to sell products other than CBD, just straight CBD like THCA and other novel cannabinoids. And the marijuana industry has put forth legislation in almost every state, including Florida, including Georgia. And in Florida, so that legislation basically would only allow for the hemp industry to sell straight CBD products, and in some instances limit it to no smokable. And in Florida, that legislation passed the legislature, but then the governor vetoed it. So because of that, you now have the hemp industry getting together to kind of push back to the marijuana industry and push against recreational marijuana and other initiatives that the marijuana industry is pushing forward, because they're not working together, which is really unfortunate. And in Georgia, that initiative did just pass. That same type of legislation did just pass. And what that means is that you're going to basically see the hemp industry in Georgia completely do away with, and it'll lose a lot of money for the state, because those businesses are going to go to other states for their production, and also the smoke shops are only going to be able to sell straight CBD and no smokable, sorry. And so I'm excited about the opportunity. I do think it's important, like I said, to know about kind of like the ripple effect of everything that's going on. And then for consumption lounges, you know, that's obviously the next step after we pass recreational. I think consumption lounges are a great thing and important for the industry to provide that kind of experience for cannabis users. And it's another way for the state to make money. From what I've seen, it's been really difficult for the states to pass legislation and regulations that they can enforce and make sense. It's kind of like, I think there's 10 states that have consumption lounges legalized, and it's all over the map as far as how the regulations are implemented. So, yeah.
Great. Parker, your product is already available in a few markets, including Florida. What's your outlook for the consumption of the future, especially in Florida or throughout the United States?
Yeah, I think there's a real, social paradigm that's coming, and we witness it at these conferences, especially with just the usage and those instances increasing. So the sociability that's allowed with these consumption bars and just more of these low-dose products, they really present not only an exciting but the safest probably introduction you could have to cannabis. So this is going to massively increase accessibility to the product, and also uplift a lot of the stigmas and stuff that people are facing. So with a drink, for example, you're not necessarily alienating yourself from a lot of these social situations, which you may have to right now. And the increase of these form factors outside of drinks are allowing for a lot of possibilities with this, as well as intentionality with some of like the dosing and stuff, which is just really important with anything you're kind of consuming. And that realization is coming in waves. So these people talking about it and really starting at the community level and making sure that these consumption lounges are able to stay in places like Stewart and grow from there. The conversation just has to continue. And so with people's public opinion quickly shifting, I think that momentum will definitely carry it over, and we see places like Florida going to be preserving these environments as they understand the importance that they play in our communities as a social environment that is outside of alcohol consumption.
Michael, I know we've had a lot of different discussions, not on this panel, but just talking about the excitement and the generation of your new business operation. How do you see that coming into play in this hopefully new consumption market?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Our timing is very interesting here, and it's completely coincidental. As we're going to launch here, as Amendment 3 is going to be decided upon here soon. So, from a public perception, everyone thinks that that's why we're doing it, and that we're connected with that. But again, totally just a coincidence as far as the timing. But it's going to be interesting to see how should Amendment 3 pass, like how Florida decides to approach this from a consumption lounge standpoint. If they decide to to allow for it, and again how they'll regulate it, and maybe take some examples from some of the 10 or so states that already have these in place. Maybe try to analyze, hey, what's working, what can be improved upon, and really come up with a model that that makes sense and provides an opportunity for businesses like us to enter the market, but then also provides an opportunity for the consumers to have access to products. And one thing that's really stood out to me throughout this process is just the feedback that we've been getting from people around our community, and how positive it's been from people in their 20s all the way through their 70s and older. Just the excitement. It's something that people want and are really excited for. So it's very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Travis, what are your outlooks on the future of a Florida consumption market as far as product development is concerned? Where do you see products like yours going from here?
Yeah, well, we already sell into bars, restaurants, liquor stores. We just launched recently in Total Wine in Florida. And, with this consumption dynamic, it's interesting because it's already been proven, it's sort of the open secret that all of society is already a consumption lounge. People are hitting their vape pens in the bar. And so I think from a public safety perspective, it's been proven that that's safe, that works. People can coexist with different substances in their body. And ultimately, all of this is about increasing access and recognizing and respecting the autonomy that people have over their own body to interact with a plant that was given to us by nature. Mm-hmm. And I resonate with a lot of what the panel said. I personally sort of lament the war, the cannabis civil war that's been going on between hemp and marijuana. I think it's a manufactured conflict. It's a planned dialectic to divide us ultimately, and then who knows what comes after that. But ultimately, we ship to 46 states. The only states we don't ship to are the ones that have criminal threats against us for shipping there. Ultimately though, I think our path through hemp, which is essentially full spectrum CBD in a can, is opening up a pathway, and we hope to, as BREZ, and then also we're participating in groups like the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and stuff like that. We hope to build bridges with the MSOs, the adult use, the medical community, unite the family, bring the family back together, and advocate for cannabis to be free and for it to be immersed into society, regularized into society, and not necessarily relegated to kind of these small channels of distribution. People want this, they're looking for this, and so I think it's incumbent upon us to advocate for everyone's freedom.
Thank you. I think those are some really insightful thoughts, and it really does bring up a lot of the topics that hopefully we are here to discuss today. The first one being tourism and the risks that surround increasing tourism, especially when it comes to a consumption market. Florida being a beautiful state that generates billions over billions in tourism revenue, what sort of risks, Paula, do you foresee happening, when regulators and operators are coming together, so either side is not being like, I'm out, this is too risky, I can't deal with the fire. Where do you think, in some states where regulators and operators do come together and compromise, where are they conflicting, and how can Florida do better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, one struggle that we've been dealing with in Florida and other states, just on the medical side, is figuring out how to deal with the medical cards, being able to be used in other states. So reciprocity.
Yes.
So we're already seeing that from a regulatory perspective. Then on the recreational side, that kind of goes away because you're able to walk into a store and say, I want this amount of cannabis, and they're going to give it to you as long as it's within the cap.
Right.
So I think it's important that we do have a cap on the amount of marijuana that'll be dispersed at each time, which we will. Every other state that is both medical and recreational has those types of caps. Then as far as the legislature, operator, and regulators working together, I think the biggest struggle in Florida is because even though we only have a really limited number of licenses, I think it's 25 right now.
Yeah.
Those licenses really operate multiple licenses within one, right? So you have cultivation, manufacturing, and retail under one roof, and some groups have, like Trulieve has 135 retail locations right now. So for regulators to regulate that many stores and that much production at one time is a really heavy lift. And I think that's the biggest struggle that we're going to continue to see is Department of Health and Department of Agriculture asking for more funding to be able to regulate the industry, and then the legislature giving that funding or not, and then add on the operators wanting them to have that funding or not because they don't want to be regulated more strictly.
Right.
So you have like all of that in play. And to choose a state that's doing a great job with
Or states.
Yeah, states. I mean, I would say states that aren't, not to be negative, but some that come to mind that aren't doing a good
Some,
job.
that are critical, yeah.
I think New York
Okay.
really blew the ball there because they had an opportunity to create a really nice recreational market, and they just made it essentially not capped, and also don't have enough enforcement ability.
Right.
So that's one state that I think isn't doing a good job. I think a state that is actually doing a pretty good job after recreational passed is New Jersey. And New Jersey originally, when they passed recreational, did have a cap on the number of licenses, and then that went away about a year after. And they've had a slow rollout with the licenses that are coming out, but because of that, they've been able to go through the regulatory process pretty well. And they gave, I think what's really important for these programs to roll out properly, especially on the on the recreational side, is for the localities to have a say in whether they're going to opt in or out for the use of and production of recreational marijuana. So they did, New Jersey did give localities a say, and you have about 40% of localities that opted in. So I would say that state's doing a great job.
Excellent. Michael, currently you're a vanguard for consumption lounges, especially in Palm Beach County. Where do you see forthcoming risks as far as on-site consumption in your operation? what risks do you feel comfortable that you know can be handled on site? Unforeseen risks that you may see that you just haven't planned yet. Do you have any sort of, maybe hypothetical insight that you want to share as to how you see this coming through, especially through your operation?
Yeah, sure. To Paula's point about the localities, right, having a say and being able to opt in and opt out. Recently, we had that sort of happen, kind of in our area, and there was some talk among the city commissions and stuff about limiting, in anticipation of Amendment 3 passing. What are they going to do? They didn't want to be overrun with new dispensaries and on-site consumption, that type of stuff. So there was discussion about putting some pretty sweeping limitations on all of that. And so just at the local level, just a lot of unclarity in terms of what is going on at the state level, right? And then where we fall, under that. And of course, at the federal and state level, we're carved out as being hemp. But at the local level, they didn't quite understand that, so there was some risk involved there. But fortunately, we were able to have some conversations and really provide the clarity that was needed there to make sure that what we're doing is it's understood that that what we're doing is all above board and everything like that. So that was a little bit unforeseen. We were kind of in the 11th hour, just about to sign our lease, and this ordinance, proposed ordinance, comes through, and I read it. Said reading it strictly, this shuts us down, right? So, we're fortunately able to kind of navigate that. But things like that. So a lot of it's just coming at the local level is something. Things that I think are more within our control, like I said, that can be handled on site is just making sure that people aren't being overserved, and that we're kind of keeping an eye on that. And to your point about tourism, what are the additional risks there? I think when you have tourists, and when you're on vacation mode, right, you tend to sort of let loose a little more, and maybe you would overconsume, whether it be alcohol or cannabis or whatever food, whatever it is. You're in vacation mode, and you're kind of you might overconsume or overindulge more than you would if you're just at your local spot. So it's something that could add some additional risk there, in terms of when tourists and visitors are coming in. So, but yeah, those are kind of some real life examples that we've sort of dealt with so far in our infancy. So I'm sure there's more on the horizon, but it's just about being being proactive as much as we can, but more so being able to be nimble and be reactive and be able to kind of navigate situations as they arise.
Excellent. So Parker, Liberty in a Can is definitely doing a lot in promoting itself through, lifestyle events and, big gatherings, festivals, different motorsport. You were talking with me about different motorsports competitions and everything. How do you, as a vendor at certain of those events, what risks have you seen or observed as far as, who's taking the responsibility as far as if somebody's overserved or there's overconsumption? Is it the responsibility of the attraction? Is it the responsibility of the vendor? Is it shared responsibility? If you want to share a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, liability-wise, that can really fluctuate event to event. Some places may require you to have extensive liability and coverage, like $1 million, et cetera. But you can collaborate with these workforces as well to figure out a more safe plan. A lot of times, this is very new for them. A couple of the events that we've been at have been, there was their 60th annual and then their 73rd annual boat races, respectively in Madison, Indiana and San Diego, California. Both of these places, really, we needed to collaborate to have that proactive conversation about how this is going to play out, because otherwise there is an inherent risk of overconsumption. And that's really prevalent when we see at a lot of different bars now. So, with cannabis, we have more of an opportunity to combat that risk ahead of time. And thankfully, with these lower dose products and the ability of their onset to be so quick, you really do, the risk is way lesser in the sense that you'd probably have to chug a 6-pack to get sick. So, people that are consuming alcohol already may actually, still vibe really well with the cannabis. It's just a matter of like who's serving it. You need to have those strict, kind of things in place to ensure that, maybe someone that's serving it is not below 21 years old, for example. Maybe they're familiar with alcohol and how that plays a role with cannabis. But it's very easy to overserve someone with alcohol. So I would just take that precaution and, multiply it times 2 to be extra safe. But that's something that can be, taken across in a lot of different scenarios. So I don't think that applies, solely to cannabis, especially again with how quickly the onset is. You're going to be feeling it in a way like a beer, so it's very sessionable, and you're not, hoping and waiting and, maybe jumping out of a balcony because you're stuck taking an edible in Colorado because you can't smoke on the street corner. So, I think regulations like that also would be very helpful to just allow for safe consumption. And there's really a multi-pronged approach that's important there with like technology, retail partners, and just public education. And that's not something that should obviously stop with cannabis. So it's something that we could be doing a lot better job with alcohol and substance abuse in general. So I'm looking forward into cannabis and hemp just being able to play a much larger conversation and put momentum behind that.
Travis, currently there are 13 states that allow consumption lounges. Plus, your product is available for sale and distribution in possibly more states and more markets than that. Does BREZ have any plans to sell a higher dose product in certain markets? And if that being the case, do you see there being any increased risk or the risk staying the same as far as consumption of a stronger BREZ in, let's say, Oregon to having a low dose BREZ in Florida?
Yes, all things are on the table in terms of what we consider to be a possibility. There's definitely a use case for a higher dose product. People want that. Some may say they need that for various reasons. The consumption lounge dynamic, when you're referring to those 13 states, that's kind of in the cannabis, that's in the adult use side.
Right.
That's for high potency, smoking, flower, dabs, all that kind of stuff. It's everyone's responsibility ultimately to know what they're putting in their body, and it's the responsibility of the manufacturers to make sure that they're not causing harm and that they're testing things and that they're actually caring about what goes into their product. And there's not laws quite written yet for similar to alcohol in terms of, hey, if the bartender serves you too many THC shots,
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that they should be in the same category of
Okay.
laws. I think the conflation with alcohol and cannabis seems to lose the plot a little bit from my perspective. It's not intoxicating in the same way. So I think there's inherently less risk with cannabis. Kind of famously on the street, people always say like, no one's ever died from cannabis. Like, yep, people have probably died doing unfortunate things, sadly, while they had cannabis in their system, but it wasn't the cannabinoids that killed them. And if anybody has information otherwise, please let me know. But I think it's important that anybody who is in the regulatory entities, I think it's important that we sort of press those people to make sure they know what they're regulating.
Yeah.
Like, have they ingested this substance? Do they even know what this does to the body? And a lot of times it's a no. I remember during the Florida, the most recent Florida hemp law that was on the table, which was actually very favorable for beverage. Like, beverage would have done great under that, but a lot of other categories would have done terribly. And so, we were feeling uneasy about that. But I think it's the broader dynamic here is it's our community's responsibility to make sure that we're having a culture of accountability first principles, do no harm. To the tourism question, it's interesting because, you know, I think in the proposed, you know, legislation
Right.
for
Yeah.
3, you can't smoke outdoors, you can't, and that's basically to protect somebody from like blowing a blunt hit in somebody's grandma's face, right? It's to protect the public sphere, and you know, I think rather than treating cannabis like this sort of black sheep, you know, shove them to the side, you know, relegate them to this side position. I think it's recognizing that there's a lot of things in our environment, there's a lot of things in our society that could be used in harmful ways. And it's about building a culture of accountability. And actually the catch-22 there is that it all starts with each individual, and then it starts with like cultures that companies are building. And just because you have a law that says something doesn't mean people are going to follow that or even, you know, do that. So the regulation itself isn't the solution. It's really about kind of how are we going to move forward. Like, this is the community, you know, more broadly, that's going to make those decisions and lead that path. So yeah, you know, ultimately, like I said, we would love to see, and by the way, yes, we are working on a spirit product. So
Okay.
we're working on something that's going to be, you know, about this dose, 5 milligrams of THC, like per single shot, right? So you can, you know, make a cocktail with it. We hope that it becomes a staple in a non-alcoholic menu. And really, that's the thing too, is that, you know, the non-alcoholic beverage options in most of society are not that exciting, right? They don't have effects, and just even beyond cannabis, because we have other products that have other compounds too. And you know, the reviews that we get constantly are like, I couldn't stop drinking until I had something like this, and then I realized I could. And so this, you know, this is a bigger dynamic, and I think cannabis has a therapeutic potential to help people overcome substance abuse and abuse in general. And so, you know, that's why we're here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's really great to see that we have a diverse and insightful panel with such positive feedback towards this future consumption market, especially in the state of Florida. I'm going to wrap it up with one final question to the panel before we open it up to Q&A, and anybody can take the lead on this one first. As this consumption market is coming into effect and being developed, as operators and as regulators, what could we learn, not just from other states, but other industries, like the alcohol industries? How can we get this better?
I could start if.
Sure.
Go.
Travis talked about this some, and just to add to it, you know, it's really difficult to regulate this because there's nothing else like it, right?
Right.
Is it a plant medicine? Is it a regulated product like
Right.
liquor? Is it a pharmaceutical?
There needs to be some sort of standardization
Right.
in that regard.
And like Travis said, you know, there's a big push from a federal and state level to treat this like liquor. And a lot of the times the regulatory bodies that are regulating this are either their Department of Health, Department of Ag, or Department of Alcohol and Tobacco, right? And I think it's important that we do start to pave a new pathway where there's a new regulatory body right here in Florida, like we have OMU that's under Department of Health.
Right.
And go through that process. And it really is, you know, I know we're all looking at psychedelics or already involved in psychedelics as we were talking about before. And it really is paving that pathway for psychedelics because it's the closest to that. Now, when we speak to regulators about what's the best way, I think none of us really have the best answer
no
either.
one has the best answer
other
right now.
than let's start a new pathway, and there's a lot of resistance to that because it costs a lot more money to do it. So I think that's really the main thing I have to say with that.
That's great.
Yeah, I think having more proactive conversations again, being truly like data and fact driven, that's not easy for our regulators, it seems. I think like making sure that all the stakeholders are definitely involved in the conversations from the get-go, and those conversations happen with regularity. So that there's really kind of transparency and organization and just a committed effort from all fronts to figuring this out, because there's so many different parties with conflicting interests that there's no perfect solution. So that's really what it does require, and I think like the point of it starts within yourself and within your community is very true, because that is kind of how these dominoes will start to fall. So it's really the butterfly effect is real in the sense of a single conversation can be what changes the difference for your community and beyond and into the state. So I think just making sure that we have these conversations with regularity and are collaborating in the way that thankfully we're seeing the hemp community come together is really inspiring, and it's definitely putting away the narrative that we couldn't do it with cannabis. So here we are.
Yeah, I think to Paula's point as well about all the different agencies and regulatory bodies that are involved, it just creates so much confusion. Just again, just kind of anecdotal example of what we're going through is the hemp consumption and retail component of our business falls squarely under the Department of Agriculture, but we also carry beer and wine. And that would normally, a beer and wine bar would fall under the Department of Health.
Right.
So, we have had conversations with the local Department of Health, and they were just, really confused about, what do they do? Should they even be involved? And so, fortunately, there was a gentleman in our local Department of Health who was very proactive about this and actually, contacted the Department of Agriculture, and they worked it out and decided that we would fall only under the Department of Agriculture. But then, of course, the first person I talked to there, wasn't clear on that as well. So just having some type of clarity of who's in charge would go a long way, in terms of, because it all starts there, flows down from there. So
Excellent.
I have a lot of reverence and respect for the pioneers of this movement and space, all the people who literally gave their lives, who died for this, who are still locked in a prison cell for this. And then, the operators who have been working and trying to build brands and increase access for this medicine under intense coercion and duress and extortion, from some of these policies. And so, I think hats off to them for getting us to where we are now. And, there are a lot of conflicting interests, and that's one of the things that, I think we all need to take a step back and ask not what is just in the best interest of me and my company. What's the right thing? What's the right thing to do? And, it may seem counterintuitive, but like BREZ, and we hope to get more of the hemp industry behind this, we would like to advocate for, Sunburn and Trulieve and Goldflower, people like this, to be able to sell their products into grocery and direct-to-consumer and Total Wine. And you might ask, why would you do that? That's going to compete with your product with arguably a more pure cultivar, a better product. Well, because it's the right thing. And that's what we want, is we want cannabis to be immersed into society and regularized. So I'd like to see us increase the opportunity, get back to first principles, all take a step back, take a breather, realize that the true enemy is like this spirit of atrophy and like shutting down the human spirit, right? Like we need to focus on what the real thing is, which is to do the right thing and to increase people's access to plants that benefit them.
Excellent. I'd love to now open the floor up for if anybody has a question, and if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand, introduce yourself, and ask your question. Sir.
Hi, I'm Ryan with BREZ. Question for you on farm bill, like let's say a hemp-derived drink, right? What are you predicting, forecasting is going to happen with the farm bill? There's obviously getting rid of a lot of the intoxicating hemp products that are out there, particularly DA, things like that. Do you think D9 would be considered, since it's derived from hemp, an intoxicating hemp product, therefore eliminating the category?
Well, the way I understand the Farm Bill as being written is that all cannabinoids derived from that flower, it has to do with the cultivar it comes from, are federally legal. And that's kind of how we got to this place. And we don't use synthesized cannabinoids. We use natural THC from like full spectrum CBD. Immediately when the Farm Bill got passed, a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my God, THC is legal now, like federally. That's pretty wild. So I think there's some interesting arguments on the side of allowing synthesis to remain of cannabinoids. I think we need to not shut down research, like let people figure it out. I'm sure there's people who do it clean, and there might be a use case for some of those cannabinoids that they're playing with. We don't do that personally just because we like the effects better from natural, full spectrum. We have over 100 cannabinoids in our product that just occur naturally from a hemp extract. And some people have even said to me that some hemp cultivars have sort of a wider range of the alternate cannabinoids, the minor cannabinoids present just based on the genetics, the growing conditions, and everything. And so, there's a lot of therapeutic benefit from that. We get everything tested. We have a clean process, and we don't use acids and weird solvents and stuff like that. But does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah. Again, I know there's the Mary Miller Amendment and all this kind of this chatter going on. I think the cat's out of the bag, and a lot of the stuff going on right now is positioning. It's leveraging. It's just political games to try to get this interest in and that interest in, and ultimately, I believe the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. Right, so it was a crime by the government to make it illegal in the first place. They are the original criminals. And look, we forgive, but atonement and reparation is necessary. And we need to repair the broken dynamic of our society. I think the Farm Bill just sort of, people say it was accidental. I'm not so sure. I think the people who write these things have strong actuarial scientists on their team, and they understand what things may happen down the line when they write bills. I think they wanted to legalize cannabis without doing it in a big public way, so they could see how the market dynamics would play out. And I think we've seen that people want this. People want cannabis. They already use it anyway, so why not cut the charade?
Time for one more question. Miss.
Hi, I'm happy with the Happy PA. This is kind of a two-parter. But I wanted to know from your experience with marketing and getting the message out there, because there are therapeutic benefits of CBD and THC derived by hemp, and Paula can speak to the legal restrictions and what you can and cannot say, and also with labeling so it's not attractive to children and things like that. As we're moving into more of an edible social society, how do you take those considerations into how you market and move your products?
For us, it's been an emphasis on what we believe cannabis is inherently and what it is inherently, which is a wellness product. That is, person to person, how you're going to manage pain, etc. But it's important that it's accessible for every person. So, access to cannabis really is a humanitarian crisis in the fact that we're denying this potential therapeutic avenues to people all over the world. So recognizing cannabis as a wellness product, you can play into that in a lot of different ways. So we're going with the social wellness and emphasizing, that importance of connection with yourself and with others. And, that's really the pursuit of happiness. Liberty in a can, really, that's what it's about, is that pursuit of happiness. It's something that everyone's inherently after. And that feeling is definitely something to celebrate and share. So that is something that we're trying to emphasize everywhere that our product is seen, is that sociability aspect. And that social wellness doesn't have to include a bunch of others in this room. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of achieve that, so.
Excellent. Travis, Michael, Parker, Paula, thank you so much for joining me today. If everybody had a really good positive outlook on this panel today and want to see the future of the Florida consumption market thrive, please vote yes on Amendment 3.
Yes.
Once again, my name is David Rahn, Vice President of S2S Insurance Specialists, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.